Bit of a double act, keeping an eye on time as a consequence of that. I know we started a few minutes late, so try and keep things on time in the schedules of these. So we're going to talk about Yarrabilba, more than waste, the circular economy strategy. So really, first one we believe in Australia that's actually started to do this as a strategy at community level and bringing this together. So it's been done by ourselves in partnership with Corio, who can't be here today, for Lease, client, Rob Ball, who will talk to you in a second. So Yarrabilba, what is it? It's a large development, approximately by the end of it, it'll be around 17,000 homes, 45,000 people, so large square footage and acreage, similar probably size to about the size of kind of in population terms, so about the size of Bundaberg. So this isn't a small development, it's a large community, and really looking at that in terms of the context of what can we actually do in terms of a circular economy. So Lease had a really clear vision, setting out like any strategy, really clear vision where we're trying to get to. So Yarrabilba will be Australia's first circular economy community, integrating social, economic, environmental values to provide a dynamic and empowered community that fosters sharing, access, connection and diversity. There's a lot of key words in there, but there's also a lot of key critical words in terms of setting out that vision of what Lease wanted to achieve. So in terms of what they did, engage some excellent consultants, of course, to help them through in terms of the understanding of what circular economy is. Really start to document some of those ideas. Start to then when the understanding is around, so what does it mean to Yarrabilba? We'll hear lots at this conference around circular economy and there's strategies and there's policies, but what does it actually mean on the ground? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to Lease in delivering that? So it was very much focusing on action and delivery. So we explored a whole range of different things, loads of reports, and we actually produced a strategy. If you want a copy of the strategy or want to discuss it, we've got copies of it at the stand, at the Ricardo stand at number 61, or with Rob, and we can email you a copy as well. But it's very much about action. So as I was saying before, really what this is about is what is a circular economy? We talk about butterfly diagrams and goes round and round in circles, etc., but what does it mean at a local level? We really conceptualized it into some very simple thinking. Linear, it's across, it goes round. We're trying to build value, we're trying to build capital value. But also what we was talking about, this isn't about waste. Circular economy isn't about waste, it's about resources, it's about wastage. Key difference. We talked about energy, we talked about water, we talked about transport, about utilities, and also about waste. So it's actually bringing together all of those various things as an alternative to a linear system, to look at the synergies, not just across waste, but across all of those things, so that we can design out wastage and minimize leakage. That's what circular economy is about, and that's what it was meaning at a practical level to a community. So what did we do with that? Well, what we did with that is we drew pretty diagrams. So this is just a way to visualize it. Again, the communities moving into these housing estates. This is going to be the housing estate that's Australia's first circular economy. What the hell does that mean to an individual? This is what we try to visualize what it means to an individual. All these different boxes and words are ideas, opportunities of what a circular economy means in terms of energy, water, waste and transport. And we was looking at the business case, the feasibility of all these ideas that's in the community. I hear many a time, we can't do circular economy because it's world. We're a small nation in Australia, or it's too regional, it's too far. This is with a 3,000 to 17,000 home development of making circular economy happen on the ground. So what does that mean? Well, we're looking at a different collection system. We talk about FOGOs, I talk about 4-bin systems, so looking at collecting the food waste going into an AD facility on site. The AD site, the facility then goes into composting, so with the digestate, we compost the digestate. The energy goes into a local grid on the site. The local grid then powers the houses that's on the site. We look at the green waste, we then put that direct into composting. That compost then starts to feed some of the agricultural activities on the site in terms of growing crops. Some of those crops, construction crops, so growing things like hemp crops, which can be a good material. Obviously it makes an interesting environment. I'd be interested to see how long those hemp crops last on the development, but you never know. So the aim of that is to build it into the construction, literally growing your own home. How cool is that? Pongomia, already happening on the ground, waste fuels, looking to make biomass fuels. actually looking at those biomass fuels, creating energy into the local grid. Local grid powers the houses. From the market scale gardens, where we put all of the compost, putting that food back into the houses that's bought locally, local produce. That local food waste goes back into the food waste bin again. So we go round and round. That's corny, but you get the idea. It's circular. That's what it means on the ground. Yes, there's policy objectives, drivers, the principles are there, but what does it mean to a local community? So what we did with that is we did big strategy. There's 120-page strategy, I think it is, Rob, which is all of these ideas, all these opportunities, what does it mean, targets, objectives, visions, and so on and so on. And we conceptualized it into a 20-page overview document, which is available, we can hand out during the course of this conference. So we looked at transport. When you look at some of these figures, 73% of households in Yarrabilba have access to 2 or more cars in Australia. Over 80% of people travel to work by car. It's a wasted asset. We only use a car for an hour a day. It's sat there. How do we get people out of the car? We're looking at avoid, shift, and improve models. So how do you avoid the use of the car? So within the development, through home office working, shared office space, city design, so you don't need the car. If you do need to travel, looking at different solutions for the cycling infrastructure, mobility as a service. If you really must use a car, how do you fuel it? Through electrical vehicles, biofuels, increasing the vehicle occupancy, bringing all of that information together, providing that infrastructure at a local level. Looking at waste, looking at things like multi-use precincts, so we can start to reuse some of these large bulky items. In terms of the collection system, looking how we can bring that together. In terms of the food waste going into the AD, back into energy, the garden waste going into composting, the recycling, collecting it separate, not commingled, separate collections of materials for high value end applications that can be used on-site, off-site to get the maximum value. Residual waste, there's always going to be residual waste, go into local infrastructure, hopefully back into energy from waste, back into national grid, comes back again. That's what it means to a house. So when looking at energy, 60%, 7% of energy generated actually gets lost in the transmission and distribution. So why are we putting all this energy all over the place? We can produce it locally, circulate it, use it, look at the efficiency of it. So looking around some of those opportunities around smart energy, localized grid, decentralization, that's associated with that. Looking how solar mixes in with that. Looking at battery systems, looking at AD, bringing it all together. In terms of waste, water, looking at water, recycled dams, how do you use stormwater, bringing that together. When you start doing that, you then start doing that in terms of calling about utilities, water, energy, waste, materials. So from a house, what does it mean for me? I produce waste, goes into power, you start looking at the garden waste, goes into composting, compost goes to agriculture, that grows your bio crops, that goes to construction, build more houses. I've got on my roads, I've got stormwater, capture that, recycled water, back into agriculture. It's in a rain cloud, so don't use fresh water, use the stormwater. In terms of the materials from the glass, put those back on the roads. So on and so on and so on to make that utilities connectivity. Won't go into these in any detail other than to say from a strategy point of view, what we actually then started to have in place was 6 key areas, what it means at a local level to deliver circular economy strategy and what the focus of Lease will be during the course of that development. Focusing on agriculture with a clear vision statement of what we want to achieve. Focusing on technology and innovation, trying to be the leader, the test bed to try these innovative technologies. So things like autonomous buses, think about it, driverless buses taking kids to school within the development, powered by biofuels and electricity generated on the go. Why can't we do that? That's not impossible. We couldn't put a man on the moon 100 years ago. Look at it now. We're now looking at Mars. To me, no just means we haven't quite yet found a reason to say yes. So let's have a look. Let's explore what the possibilities are. Control of utilities, looking to try and say, why have we got all these centralised utilities? Decentralise it, bring it, that generation distribution down onto site, looking at how we produce energy, bringing the public on board in terms of the socialisation of that. And as keeps getting mentioned, procurement and use of secondary materials. Lease as a developer builds stuff. So therefore, in terms of building those roads, how do we bring the glass, the plastics that's collected, and put that into the road? The textiles that's collected, think about the carbon. How do we build that as building substitute materials back into the construction? Plastic bottles into fence posts. Again, putting that into the procurement contracts associated with that development to create that pull as well as that push with high quality materials and how it's collected. So we bring all that together, we've got a strategy, we've got a vision. I'm now going to tell you Rob's going to tell you from a practical point of view how there's then some challenges in then looking to deliver that going forward. So I'll hand you over to Rob. Thanks.
Thanks, Darren. Okay, my turn to bring this puppy home. As Darren said, we've been through a hell of a journey coming up with our strategy as it stands. And suffice to say that this is another step in the evolution of the development of Yarrabilba. As we mentioned earlier, this is a community which has been developed over about 30 years. We started in 2012 and we're now 7 years down the track. We've got a population there and it's going to grow and it's going to move on. When we started this, and we started the planning on this over 10 years ago, no one had ever heard of circular economy. It was an idea. Sustainability was still a bit of a question mark. What was that all about? So we didn't really know what we didn't know. What we did from the very beginning, though, we did recognise that things are going to change over the life of the development of this community. And whatever we do, we can't prejudice the early adopters so that they feel left behind when the technology overtakes what they've got and then goes into the future residents coming into the development. So from the very beginning, we've laid a platform to be able to improve on it as we go and retrofit where we can. This is another evolution of that platform. So at the very beginning, we've gone to the seem fairly simple things now. So for instance, all of our street lighting, all of our public lighting is LED, has been from the very beginning. Before Energex in Queensland even accepted it as a standard fitting. We bit the bullet, we entered into a 5-year management agreement and we've used LEDs everywhere from word go. We have a full fibre to the home network throughout the entire development, have done from day one, and a full fibre trunk feed back up into to the local South East Queensland network. We adopted that from the very beginning. We brought in reticulated natural gas as an option for the residents. Some of those very small things in a context now, but things that we're laying the platform to continue on. So keeping along on that vein, it's really then looking at what are the further challenges and barriers. And we've already dealt with some of these or learnt how to deal with some of these as we've gone through even these early steps. So as we see here, one of the very first things and the most important things to us is to bring our community along on the journey. So it's all about getting the stakeholders, and by that we mean the community, we mean the local authorities, we mean commercial interests. They all have to understand what we're talking about in terms of a circular economy. And for most people out there, they'll just look at you blankly when you first say it. So what's that? So when we go through some of those diagrams and some of those explanations, it clicked. Oh, okay, well, how am I going to do that? And this is the important part, is bringing that to the household so they can understand what it's all about. There's been a lot of discussion, and in the earlier panel discussion, about the regulatory environment and where the barriers are there, so I'm not going to go into that too much, but they're just as much in Queensland as they are anywhere else. The use of those materials in road pavements, etc., it's still not an acceptance. As an engineer, I find it a little bit frustrating, but then I can understand why there's a reluctance. But it's just a matter of doing the work. And that's where a lot of people are just too dismissive. It's like, oh, but we don't do it that way. Well, why can't we do it that way? Oh, because we haven't done it that way. And it's like, well, we need to try things. We need to try things. And this is the platform we use while we're using Yarrabilba. We've got space, we've got time, and we've got the population. We have a very engaged community out there. Being the pioneers coming into this project, they're keen to do things. And we've done, again, small steps in, we've done a research project with the CSIRO, we've done some other CRC work, we're looking at doing some more. Every time we do one of these and seek volunteers, they're very quick in putting their hands up. We don't have any problem getting our residents to volunteer to partake in some of these things. And it was an interesting exercise going through that process at the very beginning. We had the adopters, we had the skeptics. And it was the adopters, we had a CSIRO project with ourselves and Lease. The adopters saw it, they got on board. The skeptic says, oh no, it must be a scam. Nobody gives you nothing for free. Within 2 months, all of the skeptics were going, oh, can we get involved now? This is really good. It's like, too late. You come with us next time. And now they are. So it's looking at that and getting that engagement, because when you drive that engagement from the ground, it goes up through the hierarchy. So we're finding that that's where we're getting our most traction. The residents are saying to our local councillors, this is really good, we want to get involved. The local councillors are seeing that it's really good, so they're starting to influence up through the local authority. The state government is taking a really good stance at the moment. We've been involved with discussions about now developing their own circular economy strategy. So we've been involved with some of those discussions as it's going along. So that bigger picture thinking is starting to happen, and that's where it's been lacking. It's joining the dots, and that's where it's been missing. So, like, apologies to any local authorities who got here, but from my experience, local authorities work in their own little silos and nobody talks to anybody else. The water guys don't talk to the parks guys. The parks guys don't talk to the roads guys. The roads guys don't talk to the environmental guys. And they're all got their own little blinkered views on things. So when you come to something like this, it's like, oh, yeah, we can see that, but we're not interested in any of the other bits of it. We're only interested in our bit. And it's like, no, you've got to think of the bigger picture. And that's where the hardest part is. So it's starting to drive that thinking pattern. So working through that and then coming up with the evidence. Yeah. So we're running a bit down on time at the moment, but continuing on, it's getting that evidence base in there. That's the really important thing for us. So how are we going to do it? Lendlease can't do it by themselves. Yes, we're a big corporation. Yes, we have a big community project here. And yes, we're driving to do the best we possibly can for all our new community members. But we can't do it all. As we've talked about before, we need the environment to do it in. We need the will to do it, and we need the commercial attributes so that people will understand it and get involved. So the very first step in all of these is always about the consultation and the education. Through to the community, through to the community, building that social capital and getting that understanding in there. That's the key thing. What's in it for me? You're never going to get away from that. Everybody wants to know, well, what's in it for me? So we're starting that process now and explaining to them, if you do recycle this, if you do separate out your organics, there are benefits for you. And it's not just a feel-good benefit, there are potentially financial benefits. So it is worthwhile. People are starting to understand that, but still further to go. And then with the public authorities and providers, looking at different models. And again, a big ask, but we're just starting to chip away at it now, looking at what are the opportunities in PPPs, hybrid systems, etc. As has been mentioned many times before, business as usual just ain't going to cut it anymore. And I think that's being recognised in the government level as well. As I said, we've been having some discussions with higher levels in the Queensland state government, and a very strong mantra which has come out, if you'll pardon this, but the mantra that came out at the end of that discussion was GSD. We want to get shit done. And that is very refreshing coming out of a state government where it's usually, no, we can't do this because of that. No, we can't do this because of that. It's a changing attitude, and driven, I must say, by Leanne Kemp, who is now the new Chief Entrepreneur for Queensland. Leanne is a force to be reckoned with, and she is really pushing it hard, and good on her, because somebody's got to go up there and do it, and she's the one who's doing it. So it's all about engagement, it's about collaboration, and that's where we're pushing this as hard as we possibly can. So where to next? Just very quickly. So we've developed a roadmap, there it is there. So we're not trying to create the world tomorrow. We've got a 5-year program, quick wins, getting our base data, getting the data, that's really important, engaging with the community, and then starting to get our evidence base there. The only way we're going to get this across the line is to prove it. And somebody's got to bite the bullet and start proving it, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, thank you very much.